Country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up.
Even the oldest Latino civil rights group in the U.S. has come out against the term Latinx. But AOC keeps defending it, saying things like gender is fluid, language is fluid. Sure, but so are Latino voters, and many of them clearly don't like the term. Then there's the issue of
Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
abortion, something Democrats usually feel confident about. For years, the argument has been if men could get pregnant, this wouldn't be a debate. Abortion rights are women's rights. But now, even that's being questioned. Some progressive voices don't say women anymore. Instead, they use phrases like birthing people or people who menstruate. To be more inclusive of trans men, Bill Maher isn't staying quiet about any of this. He's been calling out what he sees as extreme parts of the left for over a year now, and he's not slowing down. His latest focus is AOC, and he's asking why she keeps pushing ideas that many Americans just don't agree with. Instead of adjusting, she doubles down, confident that she's right, even when polls in public reactions say otherwise. Maher doesn't just criticize, he takes it a step further. He questions why so much of
Abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
today's political messaging feels more about impressing social media than solving real problems. And when it comes to issues like gender, language, and abortion, he's not afraid to point out how quickly things have changed, sometimes in ways that confuse or even alienate the very people Democrats claim to represent in the end. Maher's point is clear: trying to force people to accept ideas they're not on board with might not be the best way to win them over. Oldest Latino civil rights group in the U.S. has said they don't support the term Latinx. Still, AOC keeps backing it, saying things like gender is fluid, language is fluid. But Latino voters are also fluid, and many of them clearly don't like that word. Then there's abortion, usually a strong topic for Democrats. For years, people said if men could get pregnant.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
This wouldn't even be a debate. Abortion rights are women's rights, okay? But now that's also being questioned. Some progressives avoid using the word women and say birthing people or people who menstruate. to include trans men. Bill Maher isn't staying silent on any of this. He's been speaking out against what he sees as extreme views on the left for over a year. Now he's focusing on AOC and asking why she keeps pushing ideas that many Americans clearly don't agree with. Instead of changing her message, she sticks to it, believing she's right. Even when polls say people disagree, Maher doesn't just point this out. He asks why so much of today's politics seems more focused on getting attention online than solving real problems. And when it comes to things like gender and language, he says the changes are happening so fast that a lot of regular people feel left out or confused.
An 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
His main message: can't force people to accept ideas they don't agree with and expect them to follow along. That approach might be doing more harm than good. Last week, an area near the Mexico border made up of 85% Latino voters switched from voting Democrat to Republican. Shocked many people, since that district had always supported Democrats. The campaign manager for the losing Democrat even said, "We gave up a reliable seat for no reason. We deserve to know why." Bill Maher had an answer: because the voters no longer saw the Democrat as their lawyer. That may sound strange, but Maher's point is clear. Voters want politicians who speak for them, fight for them, and protect their interests just like a lawyer would. But instead, many feel like politicians, especially progressive ones like AOC, are talking down to them or pushing ideas they don't relate to. AOC says she's fighting for
Parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher. Yeah, you're going to say, "Congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer." The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
regular people. But a lot of those people aren't feeling represented anymore. They're wondering, whose side are you on? Maher is calling out this disconnect between what voters need and what politicians are focused on. In his view, AOC and others might think they're helping, but they've lost touch with the very people they claim to support. And it's not just Latino voters feeling this way. Parents across the country are frustrated too, especially with the school system. After COVID, many parents wanted schools to reopen sooner. Others are upset that it's so hard to fire bad teachers. Democrats, backed by teachers' unions, have made that even harder. While they may think they're standing up for teachers, many parents feel like their kids are being left behind. Maher summed it up simply: if my kid is falling behind and no one will fix it, maybe it's time to get a new lawyer. In other words, if the people in charge aren't working for you, well, maybe it's time to vote for someone else in theory. The Biden administration's education policies sounded helpful, but in practice, they made it much harder for schools to hold bad teachers accountable. The results were clear. Students suffered. According to national data,
And Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer. A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only if you identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
Average math scores for 13-year-olds dropped by 9 points between 2020 and 2023, the biggest drop in 50 years. Reading scores also fell by 4 points. And yet, the teachers responsible are still protected, as if nothing went wrong. While leaders like AOC shout catchy slogans and Bernie Sanders repeats the same old message about rich versus poor parents. Are sitting at home looking at their kids' grades and wondering what happened? This isn't a small mistake. It's a serious problem that could affect a whole generation. That leads to a bigger question. Can people like Sanders and AOC actually help Democrats win back support? Or are they making things worse? Both. In schools and at the polls. Then there's President Biden's plan to cancel hundreds of billions in student debt. It sounds great to people with college loans, but what
He ran in 2020. Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jumped the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me.
about the majority of Americans who didn't go to college? They're asking, why should we pay for someone else's degree, especially when they'll probably earn more than us? People aren't excited to help pay for fancy campuses or student lounges. They want help too. Some cities have even tried offering guaranteed income regular payments to people in need. But one plan in West Hollywood failed because it was ruled unconstitutional. They had promised $1,000 a month for 18 months to 25 residents, mostly LGBTQ, but the idea fell apart quickly, raising questions like, why only them? What about everyone else struggling to make ends meet? When you look at the big picture, it's hard not to shake your head.
All these issues, the wavering voter is saying to her lawyer, the Democratic Party, hey, so happy for you that you have so many other clients and that you care so much about their problems and all the pro bono work you do. But you're supposed to be my lawyer. The Democrats need to be like the lawyers you see on billboards. You hurt, we fight.
A lot of these policies may sound good in theory, but in reality, they failed, sometimes badly. Take the defund the police movement. That backfired fast once crime started rising, and even its loudest supporters began backing off. Or the push to cancel rent during the pandemic, a popular idea among activists, but one that ignored basic economics and fell apart under pressure. And there's more. Efforts to remove standardized testing sounded inclusive, but ended up making it harder to measure student progress and hold schools accountable. These aren't just small errors.